Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. We truly have such a global audience joining us today. So, whatever time of day it is for you, thank you so much for taking the time to attend our webinar. Wonderful. My name is Rebecca Ditchie, and I am the Senior Program Manager for the Learning and Development team at the Association of Executive Search and Leadership Consultants. This is the first of 3 sessions for our 2025 Executive Search Advantage Workshop. The 2025 series will equip participants with the skills to manage multiple searches, collaborate effectively across teams and leaders, enhance efficiency on complex projects, and confidently integrate AI and emerging technologies to streamline your workflows and drive better outcomes. Today, we are so pleased to welcome AESC members, executive search professionals, and in-house talent acquisition specialists to our sessions. So for those of you who are less familiar with the AESC, we represent the firms who recruit and advise the world's leaders. AESC sets the highest quality standards for the profession, ensuring that businesses, organizations, and clients worldwide can identify, attract, and leverage the best board and C-suite talent. Today, there will be quite a few resources shared from the session. First and foremost, each of you should have received a workbook to help guide you through today's content. I'm also going to share this workbook in the chat in just a few minutes. Following today's session, you will also receive a workshop summary, which will include information that's shared among you all as participants and important takeaways from the session, most notably the AI prompts that we will discuss. One of the most powerful things about this series is that it's designed to work for everyone, no matter where you sit within your firm or how long you've been in the profession. If you're a managing director or a partner, this session offers frameworks that help you lead with clarity. You'll leave with practical strategies for standardizing search delivery, reducing team burnout, and protecting your firm's reputation for excellence, even as the pace of client demands increase. If you're a mid-career consultant or a project manager, you'll find tools to streamline how you juggle multiple mandates, communicate more effectively with stakeholders, and apply automation in ways that lets you focus on high-value work. And if you're a new researcher or rising talent, this workshop gives you something even more powerful: language, structure, and confidence. You'll walk away knowing how to manage up, how to anticipate the needs of your team, and how to add strategic value beyond the basics. These are the skills that can help you grow from a contributor to a true partner in the search process. No matter your role, the takeaway is the same. There is a better, more efficient, and more human way to deliver exceptional search work, and AI can be a powerful ally when used wisely. I'm excited to introduce you all to Stephanie Franklin, our facilitator for today. Stephanie has over 25 years of experience with executive recruitment. Her experience as a managing partner for a recruiting research practice includes clients in both the profit and nonprofit sectors. With her initial focus in healthcare, Stephanie quickly grew her clientele to include a broad spectrum of industries, including technology, nonprofit, and higher education. Stephanie is known for taking a partnership approach with her clients in a manner which engenders trust. She has been a valued partner of AESC since 2023, leading sessions for both our workshop series and the AESC Certificate in Executive Research. With that, I'm pleased to turn it over to Stephanie to get us started.
Wonderful. Well, thanks so much, Rebecca, just for the introduction, and thanks to each of you for joining us. As we work together to bring this workshop content for you and collaborate, golly, we really want to make sure we're spending our time thinking about ways that we can work both more effectively and efficiently. As Rebecca said, I've been doing this work in executive search for almost 28 years now, and there's so much opportunity for growth each and every year that I have a chance to be in the industry. So constantly learning, constantly changing, constantly growing. And when I think about workload mastery tools, technology, avoiding burnout, all of these things really go hand in hand. And when we're working both effectively and efficiently, then we allow our workload balance to be much stronger, and then we maximize the tools and technology that we have. So it's literally at our fingertips, and then combining that, we're going to be able to work at a more efficient pace. All of that preventing burnout. And so we can't do things the way that we've always done and expect levels of excellence and no burnout. And so, whether we like it or not, we all have one common issue, primarily open searches. And what do we do to bring those to a successful close? It means if we've got open searches, we've got plenty of business. And so obviously that's a great thing. When they're executed well, it can be a tremendously rewarding experience. And when I started in the business of executive search, I realized that our work is more than just about finding great candidates. It's really about managing complexity, managing our candidates, our timelines. Whether I was the one leading a search myself or the one behind the scenes supporting search, I found myself kind of asking these questions to how do I navigate best practices, efficiencies, and then also getting the job done very, very well without, at the cost of personal burnout. So this workshop is the answer, combined with 1, 2, and 3 to what I believe I had earlier in my career. And it doesn't matter if you're a managing director or if you're leading a team. If you're trying to ensure consistent delivery and client satisfaction. So if you're mentoring junior talent, it's really important for our takeaways as those that have been doing this work for a long time to continue to communicate efficiently and effectively and understand our responsibility to ensure that the rhythm of our search, what is our role to really lead, guide, and direct, and find here with us in this workshop systems and tools and strategies that are going to meet you right where you are, no matter your role. So I want to just think about my goal in this session really isn't to overwhelm you with tools. It's to give you just enough structure so that you can take back control of your process, your calendar, your energy. Again, whether it's your, first search, your fifth, or your 500th, the need for clarity and efficiency and well-being never goes away. So let's dive in. I want to, as we do that, as we think about AI and incorporating that into our work in every phase, I have to mention here at the onset the responsibility that we have with AI and executive search. So right now, generative AI tools, things like ChatGPT, Claude, industry-specific platforms are giving us as search professionals, quite honestly, some unprecedented leverage. We can do, draft summaries on minutes. We can build our stakeholder maps, et cetera. And so we can do a lot of really great things that then free us to spend more time on strategy and insights. At the same time, using AI within executive search isn't just about saving time. It's about evolving our value. So clients just aren't looking for search firms that are faster at writing emails, right? They want to have better processes, better insight. And then what I know AI to be true and what it's doing for me is being able to enhance all three if it's used well. So if we're intentional, we use secure environments, and we stay ahead of the regulatory curve, that's where we want to really focus in on risk. AI is only as good as the data that we put into it. And if we input client-sensitive information into public models, we're going to be breaching confidentiality. For example, if you copy an entire resume or interview transcript into an open tool, we're violating so many privacy laws and just as importantly, our candidates and our clients' trust. So what we have to make sure that we're doing by focusing in on doing things well and correctly in that intentionality, make sure that we are identifying any sort of tasks that are repetitive and maximize AI there. And then second, if you're using private and secure environments whenever possible, that's also going to make sure that that you are not breaching privacy laws. And then third, staying ahead of the regulatory curve. Countries and states are already crafting very specific AI legislation, particularly around hiring, around bias, around privacy. One example that I can give you in the US, New York City's local law 144 is just one example, but it requires that employers that are using any kind of automated decision tools in the hiring process disclose what they are and submit bias audits. So there's other laws that are beginning to surface. There are some that we're investigating as well. So really just keeping that at the forefront and making sure that if AI is touching really any part of your process, that we're very clear about how it supports and not replaces, our own, human judgment. So I think as we advance both with this workshop and then we look at number 2 and number 3 in the series, I want to be really clear on what this will and then won't be. Our goal for today is to help design structured, scalable search management plans that's augmented by AI, use AI tools to automate administrative tasks, enhance our decision making, and then also apply some time and task management strategies that'll help us focus. So I know that there are a lot of free or low cost AI tools that are available that can support our work, and we're going to focus on general purpose tools that are accessible to most rather than the enterprise grade, very search specific platforms. But if your firm is exploring those more advanced solution, we've got a number of trusted partners at AESC that we'd be happy to connect you with. So just to kind of give some clarity, both at this workshop and then the next 2 that many of you are already registered to join. Okay, so here we want to say that you have received a search management audit in your pre-session email and in the workbook that we shared at the start of the session. So after the session, if you don't mind, take time to complete the full audit and do the reflection questions. I want to answer a few via poll really quick. So if everyone can kind of plan to do that, Rebecca's going to put the workbook here, our workbook or playbook. You can access that in the chat. You can access that on your email. But we're going to pop up a couple of questions via poll. And the first question will pop up is going to be, I have a clear system for tracking deliverables and deadlines across all active searches. We can answer that. Next is, my notes, research, and candidate data are easy to find and interpret. I use technology, CRM or project tools, shared documents, etc., to effectively manage searches. And then I allocate my time based on priority and impact, not just urgency. There's one more. Yeah, that'll give us 5. I'll allocate my time based on priority and impact, not just urgency. So answer those. We'll take a minute to let everyone give their feedback that can. It's just good to set some framework and give us some ability and capacity to really focus on those areas where we might feel a little stronger, where we have perhaps a better a better interpretation or maybe some areas for growth. Not sure that the first question populated for folks, so I've got a couple people answering that one. Great. Not many are answering with a yes. And when you're ready, you can share the results if you want, Rebecca, but looks like people are getting close to almost everybody.
You should be able to see those now.
Okay, got it. Yeah. Okay. So when we think about these questions, it's just really tracking. Looks like we could really have an area of growth for a clear system for tracking deliverables, notes on research and candidate data. Not so easy to find in many aspects. We're not many of us are using technology to manage the searches. And then looks like people have some time management capacity, which is really good. Some of those things that are implemented, I'll find we'll have another poll. We'll get some feedback there. So just really making sure that we are reflective in this and thinking about where we stand individually, and then also a little bit about where our peers are. So thanks for taking a minute to do that. I think that'll give us a good segue into our first topic, really. And that's going to be creating structured, scalable search management plans. If we think about something that's very much often overlooked as search professionals, we're not just here to fill a role, right? We're very much here to educate and to teach both our clients and candidates, not just what we do, but why what we do matters. And I think the reality is executive search is not always well understood, but even by the clients and the stakeholders that we're working with, I think very often it's not as understood. And so I think we are brought in some pretty high stakes moments, candidly, where a CEO is stepping down, maybe a board is looking for transformation, a team is missing a critical leader, and the expectation is find us something great, do it quickly. And rarely do people outside of our profession really grasp the depth, often, and complexity and strategy involved in what we do and how we make it happen. So part of our job is to simply slow down and say, let me show you how this works. Things like explaining why we don't just post a job, we map the market, why we don't just send resumes, we assess for leadership, we assess for fit, assess for potential, and why we need some alignment and clarity before we start outreach. And so executive talent acquisition isn't transactional. It's very much precision work. It's built on insight, it's built on influence, built on trust. And that's where I'm finding generative AI is becoming a really strategic ally, not to replace my judgment, but to also amplify our ability to educate and communicate and lead. It's doing things like building our stakeholder maps at the onset more efficiently, drafting our client updates or role summaries with polish, even simulating candidate objections so that we're ready as a search consultant to address those. Maybe we need to tailor our messaging a little bit across different personalities and different levels of influence, right? Whether we're communicating with a potential candidate or source. And then on the flip side, the same goes for candidates. We are helping candidates to navigate opportunities with transparency and with thoughtfulness. So we know we're not just asking, hey, are you interested in this job? We say, let's talk about your goals. How might this align? Let's explore. And in that way, we're also career educators and helping leaders understand the landscape and then make a really smart and informed choice about engaging with us on a particular search. So with all of that, creating a well-developed search plan where we allow time for kickoff conversations, streamline the deliverables, and then plan for any sort of setbacks or resistance. I think that those kinds of things are very critical. And market shifts for our clients, really understanding what those might be. All of that collaboration is because education efficiency and taken an extra step to bring the value that we're hoping to bring. It's building trust, and it's elevating us to not just placement folks. We are truly strategic advisors rather than just a vendor. And I think in order to do that, we've got to act like a well-oiled project manager, those of us, in the role with collaboration on a team. And that way we, figure out all the components that are juggling kind of up in the air. What does our search management plan really look like? So thinking that through, and again, you've received this in your pre-session email, and then we shared it in the chat at the top of the session. But today we're going to give you a basic search management plan, but we're going to take a quick poll. I'd love to hear via poll, how many of you take the time to document an actual search management plan for each search that you run? And so when I ask this question, I'm not just talking about having an intro meeting, taking notes, high level there, but I'm really talking about documenting a thorough plan for every search and who's actually executing that. Like, is it something that everyone has access to? So we'll take a second and let everybody join, everybody reply.
Close the poll in about 10 seconds if you haven't had the chance to answer.
Great. So one thing that I'm seeing is so far, we don't have anyone that has answered never, so that's great. And I see a couple that have said rarely, so that's great. This is a good place to start brainstorming and seeing what others are doing. And then always or occasionally, we've got 40, almost 50% there. And I think that's a really sincere response. What I want to stress is that what we're going to give you is a template, and it's based off a lot of project management basics. But as we say in all of our programming, every firm and every team is going to operate differently. But what we're suggesting in these sessions, they might work for you really well. They might be an addition to what you're already doing, or we may offer something and you say, yes, this is my plan, but I'm missing this component. But what we want to say is it's really critical to have a consistent framework to use across all the searches, and then across different search teams within the firm, so that everyone can deliver consistent results across with all the stakeholders, both internally and externally. So looking at our components of our search management plan, this is going to look like a lot, these 10, but we're going to address all of this in this session, workshop 1, in workshop 2, and workshop 3. But this slide is really going to outline all 10 and what those are building blocks for a strong, repeatable, and very scalable search management plan. So whether you're leading one search or, juggling 10, whatever that number might look like, but we want to break it down. And I think that in some capacity, each of these components help reduce ambiguity, and they give a lot of clarifying who's accountable there. And they're going to help the stakeholders stay aligned from the onset of the search kickoff to close. And so when we think about the foundation, we think about the search objectives and scope. This is simply the strategic North Star. It's going to answer the question, what does this hire need to achieve? Why now? And what defines success? And I think probably if we were in a room together, we would all be shaking their heads saying, yes, we get that. Now, this is where something that implementing this can be really critical is implementing a stakeholder map. And this is going to ensure that you're clear on who needs to be consulted, who has the final say, and then how communication should flow. And without this, your updates become really fragmented. We're going to talk about this more in a minute. Decisions get delayed, and I have a great example of what not to do when forgetting and leaving someone out of the stakeholder map. Third, we're going to talk about milestone, timeline, and deliverables. This is going to be your roadmap, and it's just going to give you structure to your search process and manage the expectations proactively. Nobody likes to be tapped all the time. How's it going? What's happening? How can you update me? Tell me what's going on, either internally or externally. Those deliverables are going to be key. And then the candidate brief and evaluation framework, that's just going to bring consistency to assessment. And it's where we move from resume review to true impact measurement. We've got some great ideas and tools for that. And then we also need a really solid reporting and communication plan. So how often are we updating the client? What format? What does it look like? Weekly emails, live calls, dashboards, et cetera. What other updates might we need to incorporate, based on what the needs are that we've identified in a stakeholder. So we'll look at that as well. And then the next 3, workflow and tools, contingency, planning, time and capacity management. Here's where efficiency really lives, and AI and automation can really help us quite a bit. So generating candidate summaries to flagging timeline risks before they snowball. There's a lot of work that can be done there around AI. And then, of course, documentation and version control. It sounds so tactical, but it's so critical, especially with firms that have multiple team members or a lot of, high client visibility. Clear document structure saves time, and it's just going to really protect our professional image, both individually and as a firm. So it's another place where a little bit of reliance on AI can make a big difference. And then finally, number 10, we'll touch on that today too, is this often gets overlooked, is burnout mitigation, some touch points, some things that I've been implementing that I'm finding really successful, and also perhaps some recommendation to make sure that we are incorporating burnout mitigation there. So I think that's really critical as well. On our searches, these built-in moments for reflection and delegation, it's managing multiple searches isn't just project management. It's a project management challenge. It's a human one as well. So we want to make sure that we address that and give you that support too. So I think that we are going to cover different aspects of these components over the 3 workshops, but today we're going to specifically really hone in on your search objectives and scope, the stakeholder map, the milestones and deliverables, workflow and tools. And then at the end, we'll talk a little about capacity management and burnout mitigation. So some of the others will be best suited in workshop 2, which is great. And we'll come back to this slide in future workshops too. So just so you know, this is giving you a little bit of a snapshot as well for what's coming. So when we think about search objectives and scope, what we know before outreach even begins, before names are sourced, before you ever write the brief, every successful search starts with one essential move, and that's getting really clear on the objective and the scope of the assignment. So that sounds so obvious, but being an executive search professional is really a highly specialized form of project management. So project management 101 is an airtight scope, and we've got to ensure that we're delivering on what the client needs. And so we've got to set that well at the beginning. Client may hand over a job description, but does it tell you why the role matters? Why now? What kind of questions does that document answer? And so if the points are unclear, what we know is that our search can really drift to a place of unclarity, things that you might spend hours recalibrating after the fact because we've not gone in direction where we had a lot of clarity here. And so I think what I said a little earlier, this defining this isn't a formality. It's not an unwritten. It's really something that is a strategic kind of architecture at the onset, where we become more than a service provider, more than a filler of roles. We become to this, partner to the client in helping to solve a leadership problem. And I want to take a minute and kind of zoom in on this as the beginning step of the search. And again, I argue that this is probably one of the most strategic moments. But this slide shows 4 components that really anchor the entire search management plan. And if these aren't clear, everything downstream gets muddy. Candidate selection, timelines, client satisfaction, you name it, it can just really unravel. So if we think about the obvious, role title and reporting line, what authority does that role actually have? What does that really mean? Titles can be misleading. One company's VP might look like a director elsewhere and vice versa. What's the reporting line? That's how we're going to discuss things like your power dynamics, right? How much authority does the role actually have? How close is it to the decision maker, and how much visibility or even political capital might the candidate hold? And so when we're working to share details of the search is very critical on how we frame the opportunity and really understanding point 1. And then I think moving into my favorite question when launching a search at what the success profile is what does success look like in 12 months? And this is where you turn a really vague input into the North Star for the search, because the client starts, if you say, if this person is wildly successful 12 months from now, what will they have accomplished? And so that question is going to transition your conversation from experiences, right? This person should have this experience, to impact, and it'll help you evaluate candidates based on performance, not just their past roles or checked boxes. The third point here is separating transactional recruiting from leadership consulting. And this tells us why now, what's going on within the business, what's going on within the market. Is the hire happening because of growth, a turnaround, a CEO change? Knowing what's going on in the business with your client as well as the market is going to help you target the right leaders and then craft a much sharper story. And I think that level of detail is really important at the onset, really thorough knowledge and understanding. And then number 4, looking at our search parameters. This is where the real reality checks happen. So what experience is non-negotiable? Where's the hard cap on compensation? Does the role have to be based in one specific region or geography? Things like that. The clearer that you get here, the more credible your shortlist becomes. And so I think depending on how long you've been in search and talent acquisition, these concepts might not be new to you as concepts, but organizing them and being sure that we are planning with a checked box that we've covered every detail and then some. We're not getting complacent, especially if you've been doing the work for a long time. You might think that there are some unwritten things that just kind of go, they're fine left unsaid, but truly your teammates will be remiss and the search will not have that robust efficiency and effectiveness without getting into every detail. So let's take a look at using AI for this a bit. And what I mean by that is imagine that after your intake meeting, you put your notes into a tool like ChatGPT and you prompt it to synthesize the top level strategic objective for your search. You prompt it to draft a success profile in plain language, or even highlight areas that seem unclear or contradictory after your intake meeting. Or maybe you say you've got you put 5 documents, any conflicting information, redact any proprietary information, or you're using a closed system. But AI can analyze them for tone, themes, gaps, and really draft a statement for you on, even suggest some stakeholder questions that there might be some areas that we need to clarify. And so these are a few prompts that I use if we're defining search objectives and scope. So as a reminder, any of these prompts that we're suggesting on these slides, we're going to be included in our post-session summary for you. You'll receive that a little bit later in the week. But these are some sample prompts. If you've not tested how can you incorporate using AI within this segment of the search plan, these would be some examples for you to really try on your next search launch. And as you set those objectives and scope. So hopefully that's helpful and you'll get a good takeaway. All right, next we want to look at generating a stakeholder map. And, in executive search, we really pride ourselves as being master relationship builders and navigating complex client ecosystems. We gain trust, we can influence outcomes at the highest levels, but also when a search stalls because we have misaligned expectations, even very seasoned consultants and managing directors can find a lot of challenge and problem. Maybe we have stakeholders with conflicting priorities. Maybe we've got a hidden influencer that surfaces kind of late in process. Here's where we have to build and should build a stakeholder map. And that's going to be an essential tool, not just to get information, but also for strategy to see where our gaps are. Wish I would have had that in the CEO search I did not too long ago. We had a decision maker that was not included at the onset, and it resulted in starting a search very much over from scratch because that person was not included and we missed the mark. And so even the teammates didn't know that we were missing the mark because the final decision maker had been left out of a lot of that early conversation. So, if we believe here that the stakeholder map will strengthen our internal communication, right? Because we know who those folks are. We know that our client partnerships are strengthened when we include those that need to be included. And we can say long-term organizational impact. Look, we've identified these 5 influencers. These are their priorities. These are how we're going to keep them engaged. And you're not just, again, filling a position, you become an advisor. And so for search teams that are managing multiple projects or working, cross-border, the map really becomes a communication anchor, and it makes a real strong understanding internally and externally for what that is. And so ultimately building a stakeholder map might feel cumbersome at the beginning. Again, something that you might feel you have some clarity on, but if not a thorough generation of one, you can have some surprises that will lead to delays. Maybe the search stalls, candidates drop out, or even a mishire because we get to you have to redo a search because we haven't included everyone and alignment there. So if we're proactive about mapping that terrain, I think that we will be clear. one of the things we want to ask ourselves is who holds the influence here, who's defining success, and where are they? And it doesn't take long. And I think here I have a question for everyone. On an average search at your firm, how many stakeholders would you say that you're typically engaging? What I'd ask is perhaps just pop the number in the chat. We're not going to do a poll here, but open your chat bar there, and how many stakeholders do you usually identify for a singular search? Is that your internal search consultants, those working alongside the client? By comprehending and then brainstorming a list, it's a 5-10 minute exercise. We can really make sure that we've not missed the mark. So let me know if you have, when you're dealing with stakeholders, how many do you typically identify for a singular search? I think we decide we're not going to do a poll here. We'll just let people open their chat if that's convenient. There's also a Q&A section, but I think it's better to answer here in the chat.
Jeff, we did get one in the Q&A.
Hmm.
Oh, sorry about that, everyone. It looks like our chat is not working. So
All right.
just putting
Easy
it in
enough.
the Q&A, that works perfectly. So
Okay.
someone said 20 to 30. We have another folks say 4, 6 to 10 stakeholders, 5 to 10, 8 to 10, 2 to 4, 3, 2 to
Great. Great.
4.
And it doesn't surprise me that our answers vary. The answer is less here about the member and just to start having us think about who our stakeholders really are. So thank you for sharing. I think those that are dealing with 20 to 30, you're dealing with boards, you're dealing with large boards, board members, influencers, some engagements, the board is not involved in the decision making as much. And so we see numbers like 8 to 10. So I think there's a lot of variable there, but the point is just to really have us thinking. So thank you. I'm glad you were able to find that in the Q&A. To really have us thinking about what those numbers are and who those people are truly. So this next slide kind of lists and helps us identify those stakeholders and kind of who they are. Anybody that we commonly think of, the client, the candidate, the consultants, obviously the hiring manager, the hiring committees, board, our internal search team, the candidates, of course. And one of the places that I want to really focus, not to miss, is even the marketing communications people. How are we interacting with them? How are we leveraging that information that they might be able to share with us to send marketing materials to potential candidates to understand what challenges we might face or how we might best market the organization? And then certainly legal, anything that we need to know from the client side on legal and compliance, as well as position the peers, the peer groups, the direct reports. They might not be included in a final decision, but might we value their input and let them be seen and heard? And how might that be an important impact within the organization to really help them be rally and just feel valued as a part of the process? So your numbers are going to vary, but what won't vary, what we want to help you with is not missing anybody. Like I said, like I did, and it resulted in really starting over. So as I think about that, I want to take with the capacity to sort of build this, what we've put in this matrix, which is on our next slide. This is also in your playbook, and it's a great tool. Let AI generate this for you, rather than just filling in a matrix. Let this be generated. This is a way that we can use this tool in many ways, whether it's communication, whether it's scheduling, tracking deliverables and progress across searches. We don't know who needs to receive what level of communication in the search without taking the time to define who influences what in the process. And so completing a stakeholder matrix is going to be effective in helping us work more efficiently. And this is a tool, it might be a little clunky to build it at the beginning, but if we're thinking about it and we use generative AI to build it, develop a matrix that works for you. So what critical categories do you need in your search effort with your search team? I think about influence level. For me, the critical categories: influence level, contribution, any potential resistance. I want to be thinking through that collectively and collaboratively, and then determining what information is going to be most important for you when you use an AI platform to create this for you. On the next slide, we're going to give you some prompts to kind of get you started, but I think I want to highlight a couple of things, some of the ways that the matrix can be used. For example, if your role is as associate or researcher, for example, you can respond to the client needs based on their influence and contributions. So, very often you might be traveling a little less than your consultant or managing director. And so you take on the role of being a conduit in the search execution and understanding what the roles are. And then each person can kind of automate their tasks, right? If you as an associate have engaged a really strong candidate, your MD is going to interview them. We've got to generate a candidate summary, get some initial notes over to the MD. We don't want the MD to duplicate interview questions, and we want them to make sure that they have really clean, a good clean kind of handoff of search materials. And so if we don't, we're really wasting time. It's just like if a researcher is working on the project and they don't know how to transfer information from the industry trends, for example, to your associate and to your managing director, then we're going to have difficulty as a firm communicating to the client any challenges that we need to overcome in some of the market data that we're getting. So we'll be able to use this as a tool and how we are communicating and with whom and at what point in process. And so this will give us a little peek into workshop 2, because we're also going to discuss communication there. But ultimately, if we're tracking it in each and every phase, and our search plan and process has to inform the decision to hire, and we've got to track it throughout. So I want to really think about who your searches, think about your searches and your team, and then how the various roles in decision makers and influencers, who you would include and who you would see their relation to the search process, what the reporting line is like, et cetera. We want to make sure that that is aligning and really aligning well, so that there aren't any gaps in process. And I want to think about harnessing AI for this function. Taking this step, if you will, it doesn't have to be hugely time consuming. Even though it might not be something that you're implementing in this way, truly you can save some time, and use generative AI to assist you. And so these prompts, again, will also be given in the email post, post workshop in our follow-up materials. But you can develop your stakeholder list for your role and give a sample stakeholder list and let you start thinking. It's not that has to be your end result list, but might AI create a list where they bring forward some people that you may not have included? And because you ponder it and think about it a little bit, you say, gosh, let's ask the question. Let's see if that's helpful and beneficial to the client. Also, if we want to let it generate a stakeholder matrix for you, you can list some categories here, such as, and then ask them to provide other categories that might be beneficial. And then also you can categorize stakeholders by the level of influence and interest in the search process, which I think is really critical as well. So these are just prompts that you can kind of modify, you can implement, you can practice with, that what we're hoping is that you find beneficial the more you implement them as a part of your search process. Now, I like this next slide because it just helps us think conceptually. And then once we've thought about it conceptually, we talk about what it looks like in the task at hand. So especially when we identify our stakeholders, we're working with a number of people, really wanting to understand how they influence the search versus their interest in the search just in general. If you've got a hiring manager, they might be really interested in the search, but They don't have, the full picture of how to help guide it, right? They might be a conduit that you're working with the search, maybe a board or other C-suite, person, and you've got to weigh their influence in the search, but you've got to also make sure that we are understanding they might be limited in their amount of time. And so, yes, they influence it very much so, but at the same time, we aren't able, they aren't able to keep interest and stay involved on a daily basis, nor should they be. So we've got to monitor that. We've got to see what that's about. This is just one way to consider this matrix is really a tool that can help us categorize a little bit and help us know how to focus on based on level of interest, based on um, their engagement per se versus their influence and power, how we prioritize being in touch with them. And so I think when we generate this and look at high influence, high interest, that's going to be somebody that we really have to manage very, very closely. We have to have they've got decision making power. These are the hiring executives, the board members, the key decision makers. Manage them closely. What does that look like? What does proactively being in front of them really mean? Um, and then when we also want to, let's just take, kind of uh, conversely, someone that might be low in influence but high interest, we've got to just keep them informed. These are HR team members, department heads, maybe internal recruiters, et cetera. These don't have a lot of influence, but they are very interested. So how can we help them? How can we keep them informed? How can we keep them satisfied as a part of the process, but really monitor what we are communicating and the ways that we're communicating it. So brainstorming this is only going to make us offer clarity to the way we're engaging the stakeholders throughout. So next, I want to think a little bit about search scheduling and capacity planning. And one thing we know is timing is everything. So not when a candidate is hired, but how you and I are going to pace the work that gets us there. And so search scheduling and capacity planning, so critical. They aren't just operational exercises. There's going to be something that's pretty foundational to delivering excellence for our clients. And so what I know is that the HR, our human resources together are the most powerful tools that we have. And when I think about capacity and a cohesive schedule to ensure that our searches are allocated well and our resources are allocated well, our team is going to be stronger. They're not going to burn out. And our stronger players, meaning those that are perhaps both internal and very client facing, looking at that capacity versus those that aren't really strong, kind of effective leaders. Without a clear schedule, we're going to get into such a reactive mode. There's going to be an intensity, there's going to be delay, there's going to be, urgent client request and reshuffling of priorities, and everybody's working with their hair on fire. And that's just what we want to avoid. We find a lot of nights and weekends coming, or at least the pressure to do so. And so if we're scheduling proactively, we sort of shift the narrative a bit and we give a lot more structure. So capacity planning, it's so important to bring that in. It's not enough to know what needs to be done, but we need to know who has the bandwidth within our teams, and then who has the expertise to do it well. So are our researchers fully booked? Is the associate juggling, however many, active shortlists, et cetera? What does that look like? Is the client, the MD or consultant about to travel? Whatever that means, we've got to have some visibility into capacity. And that's difficult. Even whether you're sitting next to each other in an office or everyone's working remotely, it remains difficult. Timeline shift. The team starts really feeling the weight of a lack of visibility into capacity, and that's so important. So when I think about our role, and for those of you that have joined as an MD or consultant, look, this is a great place to align your team at the start of a search. That is your role to set the tone at the start of a project and really make sure that there is support for capacity planning. And then as a researcher and associate, those that are working as project coordinators, you can drive the value for the team and kind of manage up, which your MDs are going to so value and appreciate when we recognize calendars, schedules, and we truly treat the search and the team as just that, a real team and a real partnership. So we're going to spend a lot less time, putting out fires and more time doing work that moves the needle when we can implement some of the tools that we're about to talk about. So if we think about identifying our internal resources and talk about resource planning, it's not just counting heads and bodies, this is what we do. It's about aligning things strategically. So who has been assigned to work on the search? Who owns what phase of the search? And then there's a lot of clear handoffs, right? Who's leading the client strategy, who's doing the sourcing, who's doing the screening, who's managing the process behind the scenes, et cetera. And if we know those, because we've well defined what the search process is, do we have the right mix of both experience and availability? You can have fantastic, capable people. If everyone's time is maxed out, nobody's going to be effective. Are our top contributors overextended? Are we maximizing those tools that we have access to? What kind of technology can we offset some of our manual lift? So if we're identifying these things, particularly who owns which phase of the search, then it's all of our responsibility to see the gaps, to see the flags, to be able to say, gosh, the MD is owning this phase, but they're going to be traveling here. How might I help to support this phase, or what tool, what resource might I have to strategically navigate the calendar and make sure that we are all as a unique team taking ownership and capacity, ownership for the capacity and the plan. Really, the capacity isn't just about how many searches that you can take on. It's about how intelligently the searches are staffed and whether the right people and tools are on them. So what we're hoping is that the tools that you can take away is going to make your team more efficient and stronger and more than sustainable to do, work together more efficiently and a little bit longer. So since we look at a search scheduling capacity plan, we're actually putting this in your pre-session email. We're at the start of the session, it was in the chat, and this is going to help you step back and just take control of your workload across multiple searches. So it's not just going to be something that helps you track tasks. It's going to be a step forward. It's going to be protecting your time, protecting your energy, protecting the quality of your work truly. And so let's start off by saying, estimating how much time you typically spend in each search phase. So we'll say kickoff, research, outreach, reporting, so on throughout the search. And then multiply that by how many searches you're actively managing. And that will help you understand your real delivery load, not just by gut feel, because I think a lot of times in this industry we do that, like how does it feel, but with true data to help that be measured. And for those of you, we do have folks that join operationally. This is the place where we do a lot of strategy and planning and search assignment. Here's where, when your teams know what their capacity is, there's going to be a lot more efficiency on how new work can be assigned and how new work can be assessed coming in. So in this next section, you're going to compare your delivery time against your actual weekly capacity. And so you'll include meetings, you're going to try to include some admin time, some buffer space. We know how often things kind of pop up. And the goal isn't perfection by any means, but it's really helping you just get a sense of whether you're working at a sustainable pace. And then reflecting a little bit, what areas are you stretched too thin? What might we automate a bit? What can we delegate? What can we rescope a bit? Even just one small shift, like if you're not using AI to help you write a candidate summary or automating your weekly update, you can buy back so much time when you are implementing some tools. So as an example, kind of in this phase, these steps, what we'll talk about harnessing AI on the next slide, based on these topics. We don't have to take a lot of time to do this. Our goal is to execute these things mid-process for efficiency and effectiveness. So it's not going to take more time. It might take a new rhythm. There might be some elements that are new that have to become more familiar. But this is a great way for generative AI to assist us. So I'm going to give you these prompts. These are going to go, in your post workshop summary as well. And they will get you started, if you will. So we want to do a time estimator by phase. You can put that prompt in. You can develop a heat map generator. We're going to look at that next, which I think is going to be really critical. We can take a task redistribution plan. We can look at calendars collectively and together and based on each team member's availability, based on their strengths, et cetera. Reassign some tasks and help get creative in how we're balancing our workloads. And so we can get some suggestions. How do we rotate tasks? How do we get creative? Sometimes we want to have long planning sessions or maybe avoid. We're so reactive. We're avoiding any load balance because we're just putting out fires. But truly, if we can rotate some tasks and delegate some follow-up, it's going to relieve a ton of pressure, and our ability to work collectively and collaboratively is going to be so much better. So I want to take a look at this next slide, this heat map. Take a minute with this as well, and this is just one example, but this is your search team, and this is the availability over the next 4 weeks, per se. This is just an example. This is the week starting July 2, 9, 16, and 23. The individuals there, admin support, your consultant or MD, your associate, your researcher. And they kind of different shades of gray access the availability. So if you've gone through some of the prompts, here's one that we can put in action. That's what we've created with the prompts on the previous slide. So this is going to help us understand how my time and the time of my teammates can be allocated. So as you see here, if they're allocated sort of across the 4 core roles of the team over the next month, you're going to be able to see the availability in everyone, the researcher, the associate, the consultant, et cetera. And it's just at a glance where we might see some pressure points. And so if you look how, for example, in the consultant, we see the consultant with more availability on certain days and time. We see our the admin's time there is really maximized, lots going on, maybe lots of proposals going on, et cetera. It tells us that there's some capacity more so than usual to delegate a little bit. How can we as consultant recognize what's going on with our team and then look up to see how we might be able to provide more assistance? And so imagine if you're not creating something like this manually, but this is automatically. It's updated weekly. It's daily. It's done based on calendar and based on calendar recommendations and suggestions, tools that we're using. And we'll give you some examples here in a minute. But this isn't going to be something where you have to go input this info. This is where AI comes in. And with the right tools, we'll track the time allocation across projects in real time. We're going to flag, when a team member is kind of approaching capacity and is waving the flag saying, whoa, this tool is going to do it for you. We can recommend optimal team configurations based on the role, based on their workload, based on their experience, which I think, again, these are suggestions we want to put the human touch to it, but it might put some creativity and at least awareness to how this is aligning. This can also suggest where we can shift tasks like outreach, like scheduling, to either other available team members or using some automation tools. It's going to let us know at what point we need to be doing what because of capacity. So instead of, again, coming back to relying on gut feel or spreadsheets, where we can incorporate AI is to manage some capacity proactively and then get more quality and delivery, so we're not always constantly falling behind. And I think if you're already using a project management software, and we're going to talk about a few of those in a few minutes, you can ask the embedded AI to approximate the time commitment of each task and gauge the team member availability based on what things have been assigned to you. So some of that automation will be simpler for those who perhaps have already incorporated project management software. But really, in short, taking this and pairing a heat map with AI is going to transform that resourcing component from being very reactive to certainly more strategic. So if we think about managing multiple searches without losing control, one thing I'll note is that just because you're great at executive search doesn't mean you're great at project management. And if I were with you, there would be those of you that are really shaking their heads. Those are skills, those are unique to you. Sometimes being a good search consulting and being a strong project manager and not your gift. And so we've got to figure out what are the ways that we can really support that in a way that creates better impact. So managing a single search plan with care and precision is a skill, but managing multiple, whatever that multiple might look like for you, 4, 5, 8, 18, et cetera, that's going to be a system. And in a profession like ours, search, each search is a high stakes environment. And so having a repeatable framework is just going to be the difference between sustaining your success and having a slow burnout. So you can't just willpower your way through successfully, however many active projects. You've got to have a system that helps you track your progress, spot your bottlenecks, and stay aligned with your clients. And then not reinvent the wheel every time systematically. That standardization is going to be really critical for you. So thinking about that, then effectively and efficiently managing multiple searches, got to use a system. Not just be disciplined, right? So I'll say it again, you can't willpower your way through all your active mandates. A system is going to help you track your progress, see your bottlenecks, stay aligned with the clients, and then make sure that you are succinct. Number 2, standardize the core, customize the edges. So by standardizing the core and customizing the edges, every search is going to have its unique nuances. I get that. It doesn't, your search management plans are not going to be exact and to the T, cookie cutter. But if you standardize the core and customize the edges, 80% of your process, your stakeholder alignment, timeline management, reporting, it can all be standardized, and you'll have a plan, a template across your searches, and then you'll only be able to adjust it where needed. So for me, number 3 becomes critical. In order to do that, I have to make my project progress visual. If I can't see where every search stands, I'll lose the thread. I've got to have a dashboard, or I've got to have some sort of shared timeline view, some succinct system where at any point in process, I have the status on the search. How many people do we have at the research stage? How many up for outreach? Who's been back in touch? What does that look like in our shortlist? Has the client reviewed some? Are people interviewing with client yet, et cetera? If you don't have something that makes your progress visual, it's going to be really difficult to track across multiple searches. And then if I think about time blocking by search stage, so not just time blocking by client, by actually the search stage. When you're juggling multiple searches, time blocking by each phase is more effective than just blocking by client. And we'll touch on that here in just a second. Um, and then time block, or excuse me, check in on progress and energy. Let's think about that. Use those burnout checkpoints, and you can manage a number of searches really, really well. You could probably, whatever that number might look like, 6, 8 searches, or you can drop the ball with 3 and burn out on the 4th if there are no checkpoints in timeline. And so I think that, again, those that reflective component, we've got to be able to come back to number 3, make it visual so that we can see it and then we can implement it. What I would say to you as someone doing this work a long time, the pros aren't the ones that are doing it all by memory, where they can just bring everything forward by gut feel and what their brains can hold. We're moving too fast at this stage for that. The pros are really the ones that have a system that you can then scale. And so the more structure that you build into your process, into the process at your firm, the more space that you'll create to think strategically. And that's what we want. So, right, we want to have opportunity to be trusted advisors. Also, I've got a couple things coming in the chat. So Rebecca, thank you for answering those questions, and we'll come back to you here. We'll get those things addressed, even if we run out of time within the workshop. We can always follow up with you post. So be sure that we'll see it and answer these questions. Okay, so looking at software for managing multiple searches. Remember, AI is the car, but you still have to drive it. And so if we're managing, multiple moving parts at once, clients, candidates, timelines, internal teams, et cetera, the tools that we use can either slow us down or sharpen the edge. And so here's some, sort of how modern platforms can, and I will list many of them here, they can map directly a lot of our day-to-day work. And again, these are just examples, but tools for project management, Asana, ClickUp, Monday.com, these are the ones that are sort of the command center, if you will. These are platforms that are going to help track progress of each search in real time. So maybe you have that already, but maybe you don't. That's why we're here. If you don't, really, you can pay attention to some of these, but it tracks the projects of each search in real time. What stage are we in? Who's owning what? Where are we ahead? Where are we falling behind? And how can we build maybe some task boards for each the search engagement, assign owners for candidate outreach or interview scheduling, deliverables, what have you. This is where we can get really succinct in multi-search coordination. Okay, so team transparency, et cetera. Those are some examples that we have. Examples for automation, just simply a Zapier and Trello. Zapier is going to connect to all your apps. So let's say a candidate fills out a form, their info's sent to your CRM, or you have some information on them and you send it to the CRM. The task is created in Asana. The researcher gets notified. There's no manual input needed if you're really in these automation tools. So you're not even having to send it. The candidate's filling out the form, and then the information goes to the CRM. So that's certainly something that for some of us would be a really helpful, effective tool, depending on where you're spending your time, and also depending on your specific search engagement. When I look at Trello, it's often used for some light project tracking, but it can also automate cards based on triggers. So like when a candidate moves to the next interview stage or when a reference check is due, et cetera, that will move forward. And the goal here is just to simply reduce repetition, eliminate manual errors, give back time, and create a smooth experience. So if you find yourself at a level of frustration and you haven't implemented these things, that's what we're suggesting. Thinking about writing and meeting summaries, some tools like Grammarly, Writer, Lavender, Otter AI, Fathom. Great writing is, I think, still one of our strongest assets, however we're communicating, a candidate profile, client updates, outreach messaging. And these are those support tools that can really help your tone, and these tools will help your effectiveness. So we want to elevate elevate your communication, elevate your documentation, and doing that in the middle of, juggling meetings. This is going to be really something that once you have that capacity implemented, and once that you've got that rhythm, and you've practiced a little bit, those are going to be, I think, effective tools, especially in saving time. And then finally, for knowledge management, both Notion and Mem are like dynamic filing cabinets, where you can store search playbooks, intake forms, market maps, interview notes, create templates for your client reports, or even onboarding plans. This is where you can organize the candidate insights so that they're searchable and reusable across searches. So maybe we don't have knowledge, trapped in inboxes or someone's desktop, but these are platforms that are going to give your team a shared, searchable space. And so again, they're going to enhance your work, not replace that human judgment or capacity. So when they're used strategically, they're going to free up some time, eliminate errors, and just make us better partners. So these are some examples that we want to make sure that you have. There are others certainly, but I think that these are going to be some that you can really, begin to see what provides you the most value. So here's our favorite tools in tech exchange. In every firm, every team, there's one tool, there's one shortcut, there's one trick that makes life easier. So whatever, it's a clever way to organize your candidate notes, a time-saving email tool, maybe it's a platform, whatever it is, I want us to together and collectively do a favorite tools exchange. This is where we are providing, I get some great, every time I do this, I learn something new, and I love this portion. So go to your chat, and in the chat, type one, in the name of a tool. You can type one, you can type two, that you use regularly. So even if it's AI or not, doesn't matter. But what is helping you stay organized? What is saving time for you? What's helping you manage multiple searches? And tell us what's helpful. You could say something like Notion. It keeps all my search plans in one place. You could say Grammarly, faster candidate reports, etc. You could say Reclaim AI. This is Reclaim AI is definitely new to me, but is going to be very needed. It protects my calendar from getting overrun. So drop your answers in the chat. Somebody just put, Gabriella, good notes. How great is that, right? I think when those notes get sloppy and we're not bringing those forward, that's something that always keeps things on track, whether it's automated or not. Nick's ingest LinkedIn profile data into our databases, SearchX for reporting and consistency in language. Okay, great. If anybody else wants to pop in some others, we can continue to do that. I'll look at our time here. Bullhorn, ChatGPT helps you with writing and upgrades my communication. Absolutely. I'm going to click to the next slide, but as those things pop up for you, please continue to put those in the chat, because the more the merrier. And so several of these here we hadn't mentioned as a part of the tool. We could really benefit from knowing what is going on in one another's days. And I feel like we'll compile these for you and then share them in our follow-up materials so that you've got them as a follow-up and you can just have some example. When I think about time management, I know we're working efficiently and effectively, but how do we actually do that? We can talk about something, but we really want to say what we want you to have here is some takeaways. We've got to have some explanation. We've got to think creatively and put these time, yes, we all need time management, but what we want to do is talk about how we actually manage our time. When I think about, and we'll bump to the next slide, when I think about time blocking and executive search, this is something that has really changed for me in the last few years. When time blocking, and in a way that works for a profession like ours, where schedules can change literally by the hour, it's truly one of my favorite time management techniques, and it can be really difficult to put into practice because so many of the stakeholders, people that we're working alongside, their last minute request, it lands in our laps. What do? We have to adjust the calendar. Um, but I think from a place of conversation, and Rebecca, are we going to do a poll here?
Nope, not here, Steph.
Not here. Okay, just making sure. We thought about it, but I think if you have the comments, we can put it in the chat. What I'd like to just offer is, um, I want to know, I think critically about time blocking. And so, if you're blocking your time, are you protecting your critical task? What are the most important tasks? And have you blocked the time for those on your calendar? Have you bookend your day where you save 30 minutes at the beginning and end for any last minute things that planning the day at the beginning, kind of first and foremost, thinking through if you've blocked for those most important tasks and are you protecting some time beginning and end so that every hour isn't bell to bell and then you end up the bookend of your day is midnight that night because you haven't been able to because everything is bleeding over into something else and we haven't really blocked for kind of a logging on and logging off. um, One thing that I know that's difficult sometimes is containing our internal meetings. And it might be difficult, but if you are a team lead, if you are an MD, if you are someone that um, is able to put internal meetings on and off the calendar, have them when they're needed and don't have them when they're not. Keep to a given time. Don't overextend. Very often, internal meetings can often go long. Designate those specific hours for those very efficiently, and then be sure that you are honoring the time of the individuals around, and that if you need follow up, you're not taking the time of the entire team with one-on-one conversations, et cetera. That might seem simple, but that's something that I hear more and more is that, very often folks are tasked with so many internal meetings, they can't execute the outreach or the external work that's more client facing. And so when I think about what flexible time blocks look like, instead of making them very kind of rigid, let's talk about making it a themed hour so that we're blocking some time for, flexibility where you've got flexible time in the morning, say for an hour and a half, and flexible in the afternoon. And you can shift the work depending on if a client has requested time or if you are able to calendar time with a candidate during that block, et cetera. Use some opportunity to adjust and give yourself a little bit of leeway during those themes hours. That way you have less of a strict schedule truly and more of just an opportunity to say, well, this went over here. However, I've got time blocked over here and I'll move it. And that way you're not feeling so pressured and like you don't have any margin within your calendar and with, in the limits that you're trying to set. So here, I want to think about AI tools for time management. I mentioned one in the previous slide, but these are some that if you haven't had a chance to implement, what I know are most of our days don't follow a really neat agenda. Maybe a candidate reschedules or a client update happens or something internal shifts midweek. And I think that manual block of time doesn't often stick because that's another thing to do is to manually go block the time. I think if you're not manually blocking at all, then start there. But then also we've got to use some AI powered time management tools like Reclaim AI, like Clockwise, and like Motion. And that will help you gain back a little bit of control of your calendar, both literally and figuratively. And I'll give you an example. So Reclaim AI is best for protecting habits and syncing your calendars. So things like recurring time, maybe you need to write your briefs and have time for research and have time to update your CRM, take break, go for a walk midday, whatever buffer time that's really helpful is kind of as habits and syncing calendars. And then when you think about, for example, you can set up what reclaim, how you might use reclaim in a recurring way is you could set up like a 90-minute research and sourcing block every Tuesday and Thursday. And if a client call drops into that, what reclaim will do is block that later in the day. So it's going to protect your core work so that doesn't get pushed off. But that way you're not having to constantly move things around, and that's doing it for you. So that's going to give you back some time. Clockwise is really a good tool for kind of a team aware focus. So larger search firms, larger internal teams might benefit there. It's going to identify when your teammates are free, and it'll carve out some focus time automatically. It'll suggest meeting times, and then because of that intuitiveness, it is going to help preserve your productive blocks and then sync with your teammates. And so that's really helpful. It can be, you can use it across consultants. And so, it can group internal meetings to the afternoons and protect mornings. We could put things in there. You'd be surprised, one small shift and being able to have some interrupted space and working alongside your coworkers, something like Clockwise will really help to, that to work and gain more efficiency and effectiveness as well. Motion is best for kind of a solo user, folks that are pretty task driven and less interactive just in terms of team. So that's going to build around your day, your tasks, your priorities, your meeting load. It'll drag and drop tasks into your week and move them around intelligently. And so you plug in the task for the week, and then Motion's going to schedule them around existing meetings. And so if something gets bumped, it's going to reassign it to the next best time slot. And we find, if you want to get started with one of these tools, pick one, that you think might best and most benefit your style. And I think that's going to be really helpful. And just try it. Block 1 to 2 week priorities using the tool and see how it goes for you, and let it run for 2 to 3 weeks and see if your core tasks are happening and are you reacting less and focusing more. So there's a lot of opportunity, I think, here to really practice with some of these. One of the things I want to note next is, how do you determine your 2 most important tasks for the day? And when everything feels urgent, nothing truly is. And so we're going to go to our Eisenhower matrix. And the Eisenhower matrix is really going to help us think very specifically. Eisenhower matrix is also known as the urgent versus important matrix. And it's just going to help you prioritize your task by asking 2 simple questions. Is this task urgent? Is it time sensitive or deadline driven? Okay. Is it important? So is it strategically valuable or impact driven? Is it a task that you've put and implemented yourself? So we'll talk about these 4 quadrants. And what I know in executive search, right, an example in each quadrant might be quadrant 1 is, do this, it's important and it's urgent. So you're doing it now. We've got to do, it's urgent and it's important. It's time sensitive. We've got to make sure that we get a candidate call in before the final interview. It's important and it's urgent. So really categorizing what tasks might fall into these quadrants. And then what I also think about is important, but not urgent. Important, but not urgent is strategic. We've got to update our templates. We got to update our new search strategies. We've got to make sure that we are working efficiently and effectively with strategy, but maybe it's not urgent because there's not a deliverable tomorrow morning. So we've got to really update and understand what that might look like. And so those are just kind of some examples of, it's not important, but does it feel urgent? So it's not important that you do it, but is it urgent? So can we delegate it? Those kinds of things, what we're really going to find, we're going to be sure that we are delegating. We're going to be able to say, it's not important, it's not urgent, let's take it off the list. Let's look at that again in a couple of weeks. So we want to make sure that we're using this matrix for burnout resilience. And when I think about burnout resilience, we'll move that forward, Rebecca, to the next slide. Um, we'll talk about this more in workshop 2, but in closing our session today, I think this is something that I have seen far too many times, where working as an executive search professional, we're driven, we're detail oriented, we're constantly talking, toggling back and forth between very high stakes conversations with clients and candidates. And so there's things that we just don't do. And even it's really say out loud, even the best consultants are burning out. So did I take a break today? Which time block energized me? Did it drain me? And how can I create more space tomorrow? So we've got to be thinking along that lines in order to um, in order to really avoid that burnout. So make sure that as you begin to incorporate some of these tools and do those time blocks, that breaks are incorporated, the blocks that are energizing incorporated, and that you're really taking that time to reflect. So we in our Playbook, you're getting a burnout mitigation and time optimization toolkit as a part of what you'll receive. One thing that I want to make sure that we do is continue to be a resource for you. And as we close out workshop 1, I want to just acknowledge questions. I know we only have a couple more minutes, so we might not have an opportunity to answer them together collectively and here, but we want to make sure that you can put questions in the chat and then we can follow up with answers to those questions very specifically. So be sure that you put some questions in the chat for us. And I want to also know that we've talked a lot about many things during this 90 minutes together. And once you have a chance to really reflect upon the playbook that you receive, what Rebecca put in the chat, and the follow-up materials, that's really where all of this is going to soak in. We've covered a lot in a short period of time. I really appreciate being able to do that and that you've joined today. And Rebecca, I will let you take it from here if we can put up our question slide and let you close it out.
Great. Thank you so much, Steph, and thank you to all of you for joining us as well. If you have any other questions, you can go ahead and insert those into the chat box or into the webinar chat. Anything that we don't answer live, as Steph said, we will be compiling in our follow-up material. So stay tuned for that by the end of this week. That will be coming to you all via email. We will also be resharing our playbook so that you can utilize that in your day-to-day work. Thank you all so much. We hope that if you are not already enrolled for Workshop 2, you will consider joining us for that. If you did purchase the bundle, we will see you in September for Workshop number 2, which is on search strategy starts with communication. So really honing into how to use AI and automation to make sure that that is operating as efficiently as and effectively as possible. Thanks, everyone.